Good evening, everybody, and welcome here for the East 72nd Street Neighborhood Association's second Democratic primary debate for the 5th Council District here on the East Side. My name is Cameron Kopp, and I am the Director of Community Engagement for the East 72nd Street Neighborhood Association. And right now I'm going to turn things over to Valerie Mason. She is our president and co-founder, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about our organization and this upcoming primary, and then I'm going to go into the rules and format for tonight.
Hi, everyone. As Cameron said, I'm Valerie Mason, and I wanted to welcome you to our last debate, actually the last forum debate for the Council District 5. You can see all of the candidates smiling that they're getting close to the end, and they're still talking very politely to one another, which is fantastic. So we're happy to be a part of that. East 72nd Street Neighborhood Association goes beyond 72nd Street. Primarily, we're on the east side, though, from the park to the river. And we're engaged in a lot of community activities. We invite everyone to go to our website. You can see it in the back, or visit us on Facebook and get involved. This particular Saturday, we're going to be at a street fair, and we'll have a table there. If you're interested in finding out more about us and the projects that we're working on, please stop by and say hello. And so I'm anxious to talk about a lot of the topics tonight. So I'll kick it back to Cameron, and he'll tell us how we'll proceed. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Valerie. And yeah, we're really excited about tonight's program. The format is going to be a little bit different than last time. So we're still going to be doing 1-minute opening statements. And then we're going to be covering 4 different topics, starting with policing and public safety, then going on to transportation, then followed by education. We're going to end with small businesses. And Valerie and I are going to each cover 2 of those topics. And those topics are going to take about 12 to 15 minutes each. And a special, very exciting thing to know, we got this little upgrade to the Zoom account, is that at the end of each topic, we're going to have a poll function that we're going to use, and we're going to ask you, the audience, which candidate's answers you agreed with the most. So you're going to be going to pop up onto your screen at the end of every single topic. That'll be a cool new thing that we have. Following those 4 segments, we're going to have a special round where every single candidate will have the chance to ask another candidate a unique question. So everyone's going to get to pick one candidate and to ask them a question. And then finally, we're going to finish up with closing statements. So that is the format for tonight. We're really, really excited for what, as Valerie said, is the final debate for this race. And it's been a great race to follow and watch. And now with the election just 19 days away, early voting just 9 days away, we hope that you, the voters of the East Side, are able to make your decision and help choose the next nominee for City Council for the Democratic Party here in District 5. So without further ado, we're going to do 1 minute for opening statements for everybody, and we're starting with Billy Freeland.
Hey everybody, my name is Billy Freeland. It's so great to be here with you all tonight. I just want to first thank the East 72nd Street Neighborhood Association, Valerie and Cameron. We're almost there, less than 3 weeks until Election Day. And many of you have gotten to know me over this last year, and it's been a real honor to get to know you. And if you've gotten to know me, you know that I'm a fighter, that I'm an advocate, that I've been a leader on our community board, that I've been an advocate for clients as a lawyer in civil rights cases and housing repair cases, asylum cases, and more. I now want to be our advocate, our fighter on the City Council. Uniquely in this race, I bring together the experience of being an advocate in both the community and the courtroom. I bring fresh ideas that we desperately need to turn the page on the politics of the past. And if I leave you with one impression of me tonight, it's this: no one will fight harder for us. Many of you have my email, you have my cell phone, you know I answer right away. And I am determined to have the best constituent services in New York City, borrowing from the examples of Gifford Miller and Jessica Lappin and Ben Kalos. It is an honor to be with you here tonight. And as always, you can learn more about me on my website, billyfreeland.com. And you can always email me, billy@billyfreeland.com. I'm the only one who gets those emails. I read every email. And I'm looking forward to telling you more about my vision here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. And now we have Rebecca Lamort.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Lamort, and I'm running for City Council here in our neighborhood as a disabled New Yorker, a union member, labor advocate, community organizer, and Yorkville resident, because here in District 5, working families know what we need. We need someone with the experience to fight for housing, disability, economic, and racial justice. And I have that experience, personally and professionally. For the last 10 years, I've represented unionized workers in a variety of industries down at City Hall, up in Albany, passing laws that protect workers, protect communities, raise wages. Personally, in 2013, I was pushed on the subway. My life was changed that day when my leg was crushed in the gap between the train and the platform. And it made me fight not just for myself, but for every New Yorker on the sidelines, disabled New Yorkers, seniors, tenants, workers, people left out of the decision-making rooms, people left out of the halls of power. And I'm running for City Council right now with my experience, with my personal perspective, to give disabled New Yorkers a seat at the table, to give vulnerable New Yorkers a seat at the table, to make sure our community has the resources it needs, not just to survive, but to thrive. So I've led movements before, and I'm confident that we can lead this one to make New York more affordable, accessible, and equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next up, we have Kim Mascaratolo.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for hosting this event today. My name is Kim Mascaratolo, and I'm running for City Council because we have seen what happens when the most powerful figures in New York City are left unchecked. Incompetence, mismanagement, scandal, enough is enough. As a journalist, I've spent my career speaking truth to power. And as an activist, I've spent the last decade standing up to powerful interests, such as the gun lobby, with my work with New Yorkers Against Gun Violence. I'm running for City Council to help seniors stay in their homes, to invest in our parks, our libraries, our public transportation system, and our public schools. And I'm running to help save our small businesses, which have been so impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. After the failures of the de Blasio administration, we need accountability, transparency, and independent leadership to fight for the brighter future that we know is possible. I'm hoping to bring a journalist's eye to City Hall, and I'd love to have your vote. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kim. Next up, we have Chris Sosa.
Good to see you again, Cameron. Thank you so much to the East 72nd Street Neighborhood Association for having us. Instead of reintroducing myself for the 100th time, instead what I'd like to do is just say thank you. As we've all gotten to know each other throughout this race, all of my opponents, our supporters, we've really shown an example to the entire city of what a ranked choice voting election can look like. And I love that people are going into this election still saying they're having a hard time deciding, because all of us have brought ideas to the table. All of us have conducted ourselves well. And I just think it's really wonderful that we're reaching the final 2 weeks of this campaign and we can still say that. You know, my story is a gay grandson of Costa Rican and Guatemalan immigrants who found his way from a very working class background to the halls of the New York State Senate. I know what opportunity is available to people like me in New York City. And my goal is to ensure that every family in the city has the opportunity to thrive that I have. And I just thank all of you for being a part of this democratic process and making it such a wonderful experience.
Thank you for that, Chris. Now we have Tricia Shimomura.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I am a member of East 72nd Street Neighborhood Association, live at 425. And so it's a real honor to be a part of this evening's discussion and to have this be the last forum of this campaign. I'm a proud Japanese Puerto Rican woman of color running in a district that has never elected a person who looks like me. When I enter the city council, I'll not only be the first person of color to represent our district, but I'm also going to be the first Japanese American to ever be elected in New York State, which has never been more significant than now as we see a rise of anti-Asian hate across our country and in our city. I'm a mom to a little 2-year-old boy named Teddy, who has only known East 72nd Street as his home, and you've all seen grow up. And I'm also a social worker trying to fix broken systems that have just let our vulnerable fall through the cracks. I'm running for office because I love our community. This is my home. You are my neighbors, my family, and I want to do everything I can to make sure that our working families, our seniors, and our small businesses, and every other resident here have what they need to stay in our city and thrive. I'm so excited to have the support of Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, State Senator Liz Krueger, Assemblywoman Seawright, our former council member Jessica Lappin, and so many other elected officials and community leaders. And I'm excited to be here talking to you tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Tricia. Now we have Marco Tamayo. Marco, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we got you now.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Marco Tamayo. I am the only candidate that has been serving the community board for 12 years, working with proven experience fighting for our quality of life. I am the only architect urban planner with 39 years and deep expertise in urban issues such as ULURP, variance, and proposing better solutions. I am the only candidate that has a comprehensive plan to reduce global warming, even though 75% of the greenhouse emissions are coming from buildings. I am the only qualified female professional with resilient community expertise, which allows me to prepare our community for potential negative natural events such as Sandy. Finally, I am the only one that proposed to build a resilient esplanade and build affordable housing in our neighborhood. And this is why I am running for City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. And last but not least, Julie Menon.
Well, thank you so much to the 72nd Street Association and to Valerie and Cameron for hosting this forum. We have less than 3 weeks until Election Day, and voters have a choice in terms of the direction of our community and of our city. I am the only candidate in this race with city government experience. I've served as Commissioner of the Department of Consumer Affairs, Commissioner of Media and Entertainment. I've served as the city's Census Director, where we beat basically every other major city across the country to deliver billions for New York. I've served as a 7-year community board chair, and I'm a lawyer and an adjunct professor at Columbia, where I teach on New York City government. I'm also the only candidate whose family grew up in this neighborhood. My mother came here as a child, as a Holocaust survivor, and my father still lives in this district. And this is a community where I'm raising my children. I'm also proud to have the broadest, largest coalition of support, including the endorsement of the Central Labor Council, representing 300 unions, the teachers union, the nurses union, and so many others, and Congressmember Jerry Nadler, Nydia Velasquez, and Adriano Espaillat. In short, I believe we need strong, experienced leadership during this crisis, and I'd be honored to be your city councilwoman. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Julie. And it's great now we've got the 7 candidates here. You heard a little bit from Chris. It is going to be ranked choice voting for the first time ever in our city. It has been a relatively friendly campaign. Those who have tuned in have noticed. We hope to keep it that way over the next hour and a half or so. But you know, at the end of the day, we do want to make sure that everybody can distinguish themselves and explain where they stand and if different than other people in the field. So we're going to start with policing and public safety. And public safety has become a top concern for many New Yorkers. You know, this past Memorial Day, I think about 12 people in the city were shot in the span of just 6 hours. And that's been part of a broader surge in shootings over the year. Many of us probably watched the mayoral debate last night. It seemed that safety and policing was the only issue that the moderators and many of the candidates wanted to cover. Tonight, we are going to be covering other things too. New York is not a hellscape, and we're a city looking to come back from the pandemic. But crime and safety is no doubt top of mind for many voters, and it is the thing that we heard the most from people who submitted questions. So let's start there. Tricia, I have you first here. So you've said in prior forums that you would support at least $1 billion in cuts to the police budget, and that you didn't think proposed cuts to the NYPD in last year's budget went far enough. Based on that, it does seem you're taking more of a root causes of crime approach to what we're facing. So can you elaborate on that approach and then on your plan to address where you'd like to reinvest the money and how you're working to deal with violent crime?
Yeah, so absolutely. So to start off, I said in my intro that I'm an Asian American woman. I am married to a Jewish man. I'm raising a mixed race Jewish son. I very much understand and can see and can relate to the fears of our neighbors who are really nervous or scared in this moment. I do believe that the police have a job to do. They are responsible for stopping instances of violent crime, and we need to make sure that the police can do that job. I think that when it comes to public safety and when it comes to reforming the NYPD, we really need to preserve what works and look to reform what doesn't. I do think that I don't think we need military grade weapons when we don't have enough money to fund summer youth employment. I don't think that we need cops in our schools and we don't have enough money to fund a social worker in every school. And I say that as a public school social worker who got my start working in our public school system. I don't think that we need robot dogs in NYCHA when we don't have working lights in NYCHA and we don't have enough maintenance to clean every single building of NYCHA. So I think that we need to have common sense reforms to take place that create more accountability, that keep the police stopping violent crime from happening and reinvesting those funds directly into the communities that need it most.
All right, thank you, Tricia. Marco, I have you next. I know that along with Julie, you're one of the two candidates in this race who has not committed to an exact dollar number of cuts to the police budget. And you haven't talked as much about reallocation and redirection, instead of talked about accountability and transparency. Can you share a little bit more about your plan with us? And do you think that we can change the way that we police without actually changing the police budget?
Thank you. Those police officers that killed Mr. Floyd were wrong and they shouldn't be in the force. However, at our East 79th Street Association community meetings, some police officers came and every month presented to us data about crime in our community. And each time we saw great accomplishment showing great work and professionalism. Now, due to some candidates that anti-police rhetoric, they are tying the police officer hands and as they serve and protect. The city reduced the number of police officers on our streets. And because we now have insufficient levels, 250 police were moved from desk duty to active policing. We need more police officers to protect our subway system, Central Park, and all communities. Shootings and violent crimes are rising, making it imperative that responsible, adequate policing be maintained. Furthermore, last week, Patch reported that a 22-year-old female was nearly raped at 60th Street and Park
Marco, can you
Avenue
wrap up, please?
at 11 o'clock. Therefore, to reopen our small business, we need to create an environment of security on the street so people can shop and go about in our neighborhood. This is why I'm running. I am the only candidate.
Marco, can you wrap up, please?
Supporting adequate funding for police training, innovation, and no lethal weaponry. Thank you. I'm sorry for the time.
All right, yes. Let's try and keep answers to about a minute, please. I want to move to Julie. Julie, you said in our last forum, you think that true criminal justice reform and an increase in public safety are not mutually exclusive. You also mentioned in a questionnaire that you support a, quote, reduction to the NYPD budget in a substantial, not superficial way. And you've mentioned how that cut you're looking for is to overtime. Can you elaborate more on where you'd like to see that reduction? And then can you talk about your vision for achieving both reform and safety?
Absolutely. I think it's a great question. So to be clear, shootings are up 80% in the city. Murders are up 22%. Hate crimes are up citywide 100%. And in the 19th precinct, they're up 200%. This is not a time to defund the police. And unlike my opponents who have committed to it, I have been very clear about what my position is. I absolutely believe we need to make a cut to overtime. Right now, we're spending $635 million on NYPD overtime. That's actually 45% of the city's overtime budget is going to the NYPD. And if you look at calls to 911, 40% of the calls to 911 are actually not about crime. So police officers are being pulled in many different directions. I'm the only candidate here who has called for more cops in the subways. Why? Because I think people are raising concerns about riding the subways. We have to focus on public safety. At the same time, we can absolutely focus on meaningful criminal justice reform. We can have a national registry of misconduct. We can adequately fund the civilian complaint board. So I don't think these two ideas are mutually exclusive. I think it's possible to do both.
All right, thank you so much for that, Julie. And now that Julie and Marco both mentioned cops in the subways, I just want to say flag that, table it for now, because that's something that we're going to come back to in this topic. And it's something that I want to get a little bit more on. But going to Kim. Kim, you, similarly to Tricia, have talked in prior forums about a cut of over $1 billion and focusing on reallocation to social services. So can you go a little bit more into your plan, where you'd like to reallocate or reinvest? I don't know, whatever you'd like to frame it as, but we'd love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I will start by saying, and I've mentioned this in forums previously, my father was a police officer for 20 years. And so I have, I think more than most, an appreciation for the difficult job that it is. And I respect what a difficult job it is. But as other candidates have said, I do believe that the focus of the police should be on things like solving crimes and dealing with violent crimes. And right now, we have police that are essentially filling the other gaps in the budget that we've made over the years. So as we make cuts to things like social services, cuts to homeless services, cuts to mental health treatment, we're expecting our police officers to fill those gaps to do jobs that they are not trained to do. I believe very strongly that there are cuts that can be made, not just to overtime, but I think to unnecessary capital projects. I know Tricia mentioned robot dogs, which we've heard about. I mean, there are many ways in which we can take funding from the NYPD without adversely affecting safety. Yeah, absolutely. So to that end, social services, homeless services, I think that we can allocate those funds and get to people and get them help before they have to enter the criminal justice system.
Thank you so much. So moving to Rebecca now. Rebecca, you in our last forum, you recommended a cut of $3 billion to the police budget. And you spoke about looking at diverting that money to affordable housing, to mental health, to the DOE, and more. So can you elaborate more on those cuts, where you want to see them go, and if you think that will inhibit or not inhibit the police from tackling violent crime?
I do support taking $3 billion from the NYPD budget and reallocating it to other agencies to support New Yorkers in terms of housing, healthcare, education, jobs, all of which are things, socioeconomic issues that data shows support people staying out of policing situations, staying out of the unjust criminal justice systems. So those $3 billion, I want to shift that money away and reallocate it to homeless services. Police should not be responding and doing homeless outreach. They escalate situations. They're not equipped to offer the help our neighbors experiencing homelessness needs. We need to take money and get them out of mental health and wellness checks, give that to the Department of Health and increase funding there so we can hire social workers, we can hire mental health professionals and counselors for people. We also need to get them out of substance abuse support. Again, we're asking officers to do a job that they're not professionally equipped to do. And for me, it's about addressing the root causes of what we see as policing and public safety. The root of so many of these issues are economic, they're socioeconomic, and right now it's mostly from the pandemic and poverty that people are experiencing. So I want to build on a pilot program that the city did out in Brownsville last summer, where for a weekend they took regular beat cops, officers out on the streets patrolling off of those beats, and instead they put out community leaders, violence interrupters, social workers, and they overlaid city agencies offering housing, healthcare, job, education, childcare support. And the data proves that that mentality and that works to promote public safety, because violence didn't rise, and actually violence went down in Brownsville that weekend because people's needs were being met in other areas. So I want to reallocate that $3 billion to other agencies to meet those New Yorkers' needs.
Great, thank you. Guys, last forum you were very good about staying at 1 minute. Not one of you has stayed at 1 minute. You're lucky this is the first category, but moving forward, we're going to cut you guys off a little bit earlier. But thank you for that, Rebecca. Moving to Chris now, you had a similar recommendation of a cut of $3 billion, and you discussed also more sweeping reforms such as an elected review board to replace the CCRB, talked a lot about demilitarization. Those are definitely going to change the way that we would police. Do you think that the reallocation and reform plan is the best route to address the violent crime issue that the city is facing?
I do, but I want to start by saying I know what it's like to not feel safe. We had to move out of my childhood home because there were bullets in the front and back of it. I wasn't even safe sleeping in my bed. So I have a deep personal connection to this issue because I know what it's like to live in a place that isn't safe. And I really don't like the way that this has become somewhat of a bad faith wedge issue that's used against candidates who have new ideas about how to approach the budget. For example, we just heard about cops on subways. The NYPD doesn't actually want to put more cops on the subways, and we've had a 53% decrease in major felony crimes on subways this year over last year. So this is not addressing the real problem. What we do have is an influx of guns. Guns are incredibly dangerous. They do not belong on our streets. To get those guns off of the streets, we don't want to wait until somebody gets shot and then chase down the person who has the gun. We want to incentivize that gun not being there. We need to invest in gun buyback programs to get them off of the street and disrupt the pipeline from out-of-state guns coming into our state. So we really need to be honest about what's going wrong with public safety here.
Thank you, Chris.
1 minute.
Yeah, that was pretty good on time. You had standards that you followed that were not so timely. Billy, let's finish with you, and then I want to come back to a couple things. Billy, I know in a prior forum that you said you support the use of the word defund, and you've talked about focusing efforts on funding social and public health programs. Violence interrupters, something is also you've talked about a lot. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on your plan and your thoughts on policing?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think we all want the same thing. We all want to feel safe. We want a neighborhood where poverty is not criminalized, a city where poverty is not criminalized. We have been asking for far too long police officers to be social workers. My plan, the beating heart of my plan, is to get the police largely out of mental health response calls, which other cities have done successfully, homeless outreach, substance use issues. And there are always emergency situations where it may be appropriate to send the police. But I think it's time to invest in programs that we know work. You mentioned violence interrupters, otherwise known as Cure Violence. Here's the study in the South Bronx showed. With Cure Violence programs, gun violence fell 37%, shooting victims fell 63%. So we know these are programs that work. What I'm calling for is let's all recognize the interconnectedness of poverty, homelessness, mental health, and substance use. Let's invest in the programs in the communities that work. I must, Cameron, finish on this one note. I don't want to pick on Julie, but we do this every forum. Julie said that her plan was about reducing overtime spending. The quote where she said substantial cuts to the NYPD said follow a restorative justice model. Julie was on the board of the Vera Institute. I have incredible respect for that. And Julie knows well that when we talk about restorative justice, it's not about reducing overtime, which, by the way, the police blow past every year. And this year they've blown past their overtime budgets.
All right, Julie, you can respond to that.
Thank you, because I know, Billy, you keep liking to, like to call out, and I don't really understand it because I have been absolutely crystal clear on what my view is. I have said it time and time again. I have never said that I would commit to any dollar figure cut. What I have said is that I believe we can have meaningful criminal justice reform, and I've listed many ways we can do that, but now is not the time to defund the police. Crime is rising in this city. Public safety matters. It is one of the #1 issues that people in the community come to talk to me about. We need people to feel safe in their communities. We cannot defund the police. So I've been very clear about it. And if you think that and I just want to wrap up, if you think that we shouldn't be cutting the $635 million overtime that we're paying in NYPD, then you're showing a fundamental misunderstanding of how the city budget works.
I think we should cut overtime, but Cameron, let me just say this. Julie, you have said, take the police out of mental health calls. You've said, take the police out of traffic enforcement, all things I agree with. Isn't that by definition a cut to the NYPD budget? Aren't you therefore calling for a cut to the NYPD and the actual things that they're doing day to day?
No, I have not. You've actually attacked me for not calling for a cut to the NYPD budget. You've been on forum saying that I should have. So it's Billy. No, I have not.
No, I didn't attack you after that. But just for this organization, for the Upper East Side, they published your answer to defunding the police. You said take the police out of traffic enforcement and mental health.
Yeah, we should, absolutely. Let me be very clear about that. Yeah. I do believe that the Department of Transportation should play a much larger role in routine traffic stops. We need the NYPD to focus on solving crime. We need the NYPD to focus on gun violence, on shootings, on rapes, on murders, on hate crimes. That is 100% what we need to focus on. And that is why I haven't committed to a dollar figure cut. And I won't.
You guys both have the opportunity to ask each other questions. Remember, we have this new section, and I would love to see you both continue that engagement in the next section.
Thank
we
you.
have 5 other great candidates. And look, I appreciate the back and forth. We only have 2 minutes left for this section, and I wanted to cover cops on the subways. So I'm going to go now one by one on this question. One of the biggest wedge issues in the first mayoral debate was adding cops to the subways in response to a recent bout of hate crimes and the subway slashings. And Mayor de Blasio, a couple weeks ago, added 250 cops to the subway system, bowing to pressure from transit system leaders. Sarah Feinberg, Pat Foy, they were the ones calling for it. So I want to get an initial breakdown here. do you support that move to add 250 cops to the subway or not? Just a yes or no. Going down the line, Tricia, yes or no?
It's not enough. It's not, the cops are not, I'm sorry, I know you're looking for a yes or no answer, but the truth is that we're still seeing hate crimes on the subway. So no, I don't think that that's the answer. I do think that we need EMTs and social workers on our subways.
But to cops, no cops or yes cops. I understand that some people are going to say healthcare, mental health workers, social workers, there's supplemental things, but do you want more cops? Right now, there was 3,250 cops. There were 3,000 before. Are you happy that there were 250 more cops added?
I'm not opposed to the 250 cops added, but I don't think that they're doing, I don't think that it's solving the problem. So I'm not going to say more of something that's not solving the problem. I'm going to say that we should be looking for a new approach to this, that we need to be looking at, as Billy said, the intersection of these different issues, particularly mental illness. And that requires people who are actually trained to de-escalate and trained to deal with mental illness. That's social workers and that's EMT.
Okay. Thank you, Tricia. We really need a yes or no from you, Marco. Don't go on here. Yes or no?
I'm going to be very quick. Yes, we need that, and we need undercover cops too. Thank you.
Great. Julie?
Yes.
Kim?
No.
Rebecca?
I was pushed on the subway, and that's why I have a lifelong disability. And I still say no to more cops on the subway. A cop wouldn't have prevented what happened to me, and they won't prevent the incidents we're seeing. We need social workers. We need cure violence. We need other solutions.
Thank you. Chris?
What she said, no.
And Billy?
No, we've added police. It hasn't helped. We need to invest in other things that we know work far better.
Okay. And that is a wrap on a very feisty here, criminal justice, public safety section. But thank you, everybody. And again, when Valerie takes over for this next one, let's try and keep answers to 1 minute. And back and forth can happen, but you have a whole round to ask each other questions. So Valerie, I turn it over to you.
Well, yes, a very feisty group now. I think everybody knows this is the last one. So get it while you can. This next segment is about transportation. And as many of you know, I serve on the Transportation Committee of Community Board 8, and as do many of you that are sitting here today. And transportation is something that I really like to talk about and read about. And so this could go on forever, but I'm going to try to keep focused myself. I did go back and looked at everybody's websites, and I urge everyone who's watching tonight to do that. These are very thoughtful papers on transportation and all sorts of other issues. And there are a lot of agreements among you about transportation in the city, about dealing with parking placards and calls for more open streets programs and expanding the open street programs, and a focus on advocating bus transportation over subways and creating more
Valerie, I'm just gonna butt in. We forgot about our new poll feature that we got all.
Oh, I thought that was going on, so I didn't want to. I thought people were voting, so I didn't want to.
All right.
Was it working?
Can we queue up the poll?
Okay.
All right. And
this is from the last segment. I'm not going to don't look, candidates. What I really want to ask you, and I want to start, and I'm sure you've been talking about transportation a lot. One of the things that's not really addressed in any of your segments is congestion pricing as a concept. So I want to sort of go around with each of you and talk about, and you will end up where you end up with your answer, but talk about whether you think congestion pricing means reducing congestion. And then secondly, what does it really mean for this neighborhood? Because congestion pricing is really going to affect this council district and perhaps Council District 4 more than any place else in the city of New York. So I'm going to start with Rebecca and ask you about that.
So I'm understanding of congestion pricing, the environmental aspects, congestion on our streets. We all deal with it as New Yorkers. To me, what comes to mind, though, is the unique perspective that our community has and the unique impact we'll feel, because the congestion line for pricing for the toll to go into effect, it cuts right through the council district. And there are a lot of community members that rely on cars, disabled New Yorkers, some of our older neighbors, and I'm concerned about the impacts this toll is going to have. So I want to have conversations with our state leaders to get some carve outs in what's going to be done to be sure that people in our community that are going to have to drive up and down over that toll line have an exemption for it, specifically disabled New Yorkers, specifically seniors that have to rely on these cars. Outside of that, we can have people apply and say that I live in the congestion pricing zone through my regular course of business, the regular course of getting to and from my home, for example, I will be impacted by this toll and get exemptions for people. I think it's important to move forward for congestion, but we need to be sure that we have carve outs for our community specifically because of the impacts it's going to have.
Okay, thank you. Did we want to say something about sharing the poll results? Or are we?
Sure.
Okay, so
People can see them, yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm going to stop sharing them because I don't care about topic 1 anymore. So, okay. No, I always care about topic 1. Okay, how about you, Billy? What about congestion pricing in this neighborhood? You and I have had some heated conversations about this since we first met.
Or not so heated, not so feisty as the last round.
Passionate.
Yes,
They've been
passionate.
passionate.
Both very passionate about the neighborhood. I support congestion pricing, and my answer is I do think it's about reducing congestion. It's also about funding the MTA. We know that we've got a climate crisis on our hands, and as Marco's pointed out, 70% of our building emissions 70% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings, but 30% almost come from vehicles. The overwhelming majority are from cars. So what is congestion pricing going to do? It's going to fund the MTA, $1 billion raise, which then gets bonded out and raises about $10 billion. And importantly, I think how it could affect our district is we desperately need signal repairs on the Lexington line, and we desperately need accessibility, elevators on the Lexington line. Hardly any of the stations in our district have elevators. But here's something where Valerie, I think you and I very much agree on. There is a traffic mobility review board. It needs to be complying with the open meetings law, and I think it needs representation from our neighborhood on the board. I believe I was arguing for a resolution at the community board level that would say we want 2 members from our community on the TMRB, the Traffic Mobility Review Board. Why? Because we need people who are very much in touch with how congestion pricing is going to affect our neighborhood, particularly around 61st, 60th, 58th, and 59th Street. You've got some people who are going to, circle the block and get hit with the charge incidentally. So we need to be looking out for those things. But big picture, we desperately need to fund the MTA, and we need to address the congestion crisis in our city. As long as I've been in the city, 15 years since college, since I got here for college, traffic has been terrible, and it's always going to continue to be terrible unless we adopt innovative solutions.
Okay. How about you, Marco? What do you think of congestion pricing in general and for this community?
Rebecca, Tricia, and Billy voted in favor of the congestion pricing in the community board. This tax is not going to resolve the traffic conditions because these drivers will come to our community regardless of this tax. Others may stay driving around the low 60s, increasing more traffic, creating poor quality of air, and reducing parking spaces in our community. Consequently, this is a tax for the middle and low income families, forming a burden on them, inflation. Indeed, we have approximately 70,000 household renters, from which 52% of the household renters are paying more than 30% of their income toward the rent. Another 23% are paying more than 50% for the rent. So thousands of families will have 2 choices: either pay the rent or not be homeless or starving.
Thank you. How about you, Kim? What is your feeling about congestion pricing? You had a lot of, on your website, you had a lot about congestion.
Yeah, well, I talk a lot about congestion because I truly believe that that climate change is, one of the great existential threats of our generation, and I think everything that we can do as a city to address that threat, we have to try everything possible. So I do support congestion pricing. I don't support the fact that the state essentially kicked the can down the road rather than putting into place certain policies, basically handing it over to this other group that was then supposed to make these decisions. So we don't yet know a lot of the details. One of the things that I have talked about, and I think Marco alluded to this, was the fact that because we are right at the edge of that zone, that there is concern about people coming into the city or into Manhattan, parking just above the line, and therefore increasing congestion in this area. And I've talked about the possibility of things like residential parking permits to help folks who do live here. But I will take issue with one thing that Marco said. He talked about a tax on lower income New Yorkers. The fact is, vast majority of low-income New Yorkers don't drive in the city. They take the bus or they take the train. And right now, the subway is in disrepair because it's not funded well enough, and buses are often late or delayed because they're stuck in traffic, particularly going through Midtown Manhattan. And so I actually think that getting congestion under control and getting more cars off the road will ultimately help more low-income New Yorkers in the city, will help us invest in our public transportation system, which I think is vital to, to any thriving city. And so I do support it. We want to, help folks in the neighborhood who may be disproportionately affected. But overall, I support it because I support anything we can do to get cars off the road and help solve global warming in our city.
Thanks a lot. Julie, what about you?
Sure. So as the former Commissioner of Consumer Affairs, I implemented the commuter benefits law, and we did that as a city to encourage public transportation, to incentivize the use of it, and to protect the environment. Obviously, with congestion pricing, there are really strong environmental reasons for congestion pricing, which I support. With that said, I am concerned about the impact to the district, and we need exemptions. And we are going to need a city council person who has a lot of city government experience, who's going to be able to fight very hard to get those exemptions for the district. We also need to increase bus and subway service at the same time, because we don't want a situation where previous former drivers are now swarming up to the borderline and clogging up the district. And so we've got to address this, and we address it in a number of ways, getting the right exemptions and making sure that we're increasing particularly bus service, because I think there's a real opportunity there, as Valerie, as you and I have discussed.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Chris? What are you thinking about congestion pricing?
I agree with a lot of what I just heard. I agree with what Julie just said about buses. We really need to increase the amount of the public busing that happens in the city, because a lot of people rely on that for their daily commutes and transportation. And it's, as somebody who uses it very frequently, it's constant traffic. And as Rebecca said, we need to make sure that we're creating the right exemptions for those who are going to be disproportionately impacted by this, and for whom non-car transportation is simply not an option. And I believe Kim was the first to bring up the issue of people congesting right over the line to avoid the pricing. And Billy had a lot of smart ideas for that. So I think you're seeing a lot of agreement among us that dealing with congestion is incredibly important, but we need to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's smart. Because if we're too haphazard about it, what we're going to end up doing is creating a series of preventable problems that aren't going to address the actual congestion issue in the first place.
Okay, Trisha, we'll end with you, and then I'm going to have a follow-up. Go ahead.
Sure. So while I agree with the concept of congestion pricing, and I was happy to support that on the community board, I think that the devil's in the details here, and that's really where we're seeing a lot of problems. I think that there are a lot of concerns, more questions than answers, frankly, when it comes to the details of congestion pricing. I think that everything that all the other candidates said about lack of representation from anybody from Manhattan, about the issue with it cutting up the district, the concern about people parking their cars and then riding our subways right on the lines, are all extremely valid, and I share those concerns. I'm just going to add one more piece of this, which is that the idea behind congestion pricing was to reduce congestion. I'm going to take a very local approach here. I live at 425 East 72nd Street. I am on the first floor. I see congestion outside my window every day. And I know, Valerie, we've had this conversation a lot. The reason for the congestion on our street is because of the double parked trucks. And this plan does not do anything to address the double parking of those vehicles. And so I think that in order to really reduce congestion here, if that's the goal, then we really need to be talking about these delivery trucks. We need to be talking about the other ways that congestion happens. And we need to be looking at this, really looking at the forest through the trees here in terms of all ways in which congestion happens. And to other people's points about, the best way to stop reliance on private vehicles is when you have a multimodal, affordable, efficient, and accessible public transportation system. All of those things are not happening right now. So we also need to be focusing on building a transportation system that is worthy of our city. And that really, I think, is how we're going to cut congestion.
Okay, so as a follow-up, as you can tell, this is one of my pet topics. I think you're all aware that taxis that drop people off and ride around in our neighborhood are the only area above 65th Street to 96th Street that every time you get in a taxi, you pay an additional $3. It is actually called a congestion pricing tax. That means that if you come home from one of the airports as well, you are the only New Yorkers that are paying extra money to get to your home. So tell me, fair, unfair, anything you're going to do about it? Marco, I'll go to you first because you seem like you want to answer. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Valerie. Absolutely, that is completely unfair because we are not part of this congestion pricing, and we had to reduce because it's affecting the middle income families. As a matter of fact, one fellow community member that lives in a very wealthy area, he was complaining that at the end of the month, he was seeing the bill on the credit card that it is increasing too much for him just only to bring their children to the school. And that is wrong. It has to be removed, that $3 fee. Thank you.
Rebecca?
I do agree that it's unfair to have this extra tax on us. I think about accessibility. I think about so many New Yorkers that simply have to rely on taking a taxi. For example, after I was pushed on the subway for over a year, I couldn't take the subway or even buses because we didn't have kneeling buses in our entire community or throughout the city. So it really harms so many New Yorkers that, again, don't have the option to get on a subway, may not have the option to get on a bus, and need to rely on these taxis. So long term, I would like to see the city remove that in our neighborhood. I understand it's going to be very difficult to do. We're going to have to get very, targeted with our policy on that front, but it pivots back to accessibility for me and how we're harming people that truly need to rely on these vehicles because they don't have an option to get on public transit.
Billy?
Yeah, I think as we bring in congestion pricing, we should get rid of the surcharge. And what's really unfair is that we're seeing, an epidemic of taxi driver suicides in our city. They've been completely screwed over by the twin evils of, in my opinion, predatory lenders on Wall Street and a government that's turned its back on the taxi industry. So we need to rectify that. If I may use Valerie with the remainder of my time, I think as we talk about these issues of congestion, we really need bold plans for how we're going to reimagine how we use our streets. Some people suggested it already. I completely agree with Kim, residential parking permits. And then exploring how we're going to do loading and unloading, get rid of double parking. How do we attack double parking? By actually creating loading zones in our neighborhood. I want to just briefly salute Craig.
Okay. You gotta wrap up.
Oh, am I out of time?
Yeah. How about you, Julie?
Thank you.
Yes, it is a very punitive fee because it's obviously affecting our district, and this should be changed. In order to change it, I agree with Rebecca, it's not going to be easy to do. It will require a very strong lobbying effort to remove this congestion surcharge, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible. Again, I think for something like this, it has a disproportionate and unfair impact on our district. And for that reason alone, it's really unfair, and particularly vis-a-vis COVID, with unemployment rates very high and things, at a very difficult point for our city. This is a time where we really need to revisit this issue.
Okay, Kim, how about you?
Yeah, I actually completely agree with Billy on that point. I think as we phase in congestion pricing, to me, this surcharge, I think, was a stopgap measure. But I think that once we have congestion pricing, I don't think it'll be necessary anymore. And I agree to what everyone else has said, which is that congestion pricing is certainly not the be all end all when we talk about eliminating congestion. I was taking our cat to the vet the other day, and we were in a car, and the amount of trucks that were double parked on either side was really ridiculous, and traffic was slowed to a complete standstill. So I support loading zones, and for our neighborhood, we also need to be incentivizing off-hour deliveries for small businesses. I realize that businesses need those deliveries, but we need to figure out ways to get those trucks off the street, particularly during the day.
Okay, great. Chris, what do you think? Can you make your answer more just confined to the surcharge?
Simple answer, it's unfair. Specifically, I'm concerned about the impact, in addition to disabled New Yorkers, on seniors. We have a disproportionately high number of seniors who live in this area and rely on car services to get from place to place, and we have to fix that. So confined answer is seniors, disabled New Yorkers. It's unfair. Let's fix it.
Okay, and I think Tricia, I owe you one answer. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I agree. The surcharge is unfair. I agree. I'll just add to Chris's, Chris and Rebecca, it's not just people with disabilities. It's not just seniors, it's families too. This is what was brought up in our community board meeting when we last spoke about this. I think, Valerie, you remember when one of our former board members brought up the fact that his doctors are on the other side of town. He has 2 daughters. There's no way right now, with public transportation being so unreliable, there's no way for him to get across town and get back unless they take a cab. So really, this is punitive in our community, and we need to get this taken away as quickly as possible.
Well, okay. Well, I'm very glad that you're all in agreement with East 72nd Street Neighborhood Association. So whoever is the winner will be happy to lending a hand to get rid of this horrible surcharge. Thank you. We're ending the segment on transportation. I urge everyone to go to the websites of all the candidates to see their plans. Some of them are 18 pages long, and they have a lot of good ideas. And I think you'll find it very informative. So the poll is going on right now, and so we'll wait for that to be finished. And then we'll move on to the next topic. So I'll kick it back to Cameron.
Thank you, Valerie. And I think we can show the answers for a second, and then we gotta dive in because we've been going a little over time on the first 2 topics. We're moving to education, and we're not going to do this one with 1-minute questions because I think there's a few things that people would like to hear about. I want to start on the SHSAT and the specialized high schools. So I'm going to start with Kim here. In a prior forum, I've heard you recommend keeping the SHSAT, but adding in other factors while also setting minimum diversity thresholds at the schools. Can you just briefly go into that? We're trying to keep these under 30 seconds. Is that an accurate representation? What's your plan for these specialized high schools?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just don't believe that one test should determine someone's educational future. I mean, ultimately, we have this sort of false scarcity with these specialized high schools, and I would like to see more opportunities for all students so that we don't have this hyper competitive system where people are, going after each other to try to get one of only a select few spots. But yeah, I think diversity thresholds, I think, admitting a certain percentage of people who do well from all of the area middle schools would do a lot towards that end. I think diversity is a goal in and of itself. I think it's important. I think that is as valuable as anything else in a school, and so we want to fight for it. But yeah, I think ultimately it has to be a number of factors that come together to determine whether or not somebody should be admitted into one of those high schools. Thanks,
Kim. Billy, let's try and keep this to 30 seconds. You are supported by Kids PAC. You've indicated that you'd eliminate the test. What admissions criteria would you use? What kind of factors would you look at?
Yeah, I am proud to be endorsed by Kids PAC, a group of public school parents fighting for equity and smaller class sizes. And what I told them was that I think we need a more holistic approach. I mean, if you look at the SHSAT, this one-shot test, what has it resulted in? It's resulted in schools like Stuyvesant, where only 8 out of about 750 students are Black or Latinx. I think all of us should think that's wrong. So what I do, holistic measures that involve more of a portfolio approach, grades, essays, teacher recommendations. I think that is bound to increase Black and Latinx representation in the specialized high schools.
Thanks, Billy. Julie, so I think you're similar to Kim. You want to keep the test, but also create a more holistic approach. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I believe we should keep the test, but add in teacher recommendations, essays, grades, and other factors. It can't only be the test. I also believe we should expand specialized high schools and actually have more of them. And I want to just end by saying I strongly support G&T. I believe that we should be expanding G&T for our youngest learners and actually build more G&T programs all across the city, which would get to the goal of diversity so that we can also diversify the applicant pool for those programs.
Thank you, Julie. And by the way, everybody, I'll ask about G&T right after this, so you don't have to weigh in there just now. Let's move now to Marco. Marco, what is your thoughts on the specialized high schools and the SHSAT? I think you're muted, Marco.
Can you hear me now?
We got you now.
Okay, thank you.
It's not a 72nd Street Association debate without two Marco muting incidents. We love it.
Okay, thank you. First, what we have to do is we have to invest in universal literacy by the 3rd grade, so no child will be left behind. So, and those children has also to have a constant remedial classes. When they reach at the time to have this famous test, we can have so many children, so we can create Stevenson Bronx, Stevenson Queens, Stevenson Brooklyn, Stevenson Staten Island, and we can create a diversity in that way. We can, this is the best way to approach this kind of test. Thank you.
Thanks, Marco. Chris, I think I've heard that you also fully oppose the SHSAT, so similar to Billy. What is your kind of replacement system, and what's your kind of plan for tackling this diversity gap we have in our specialized schools?
Not to be a broken record, but I don't just slightly agree with. I agree 100% with Billy. He's exactly right. This test does not work as intended. I don't understand why we're even still having this debate about this test when we have clear data about how badly it works. We need a more holistic approach. It's not serving our children well. Education is incredibly important to me. I'm in the process right now of licensing for becoming a foster parent. I want my kids to go to good schools and have their needs served, and for them not to be judged based on a single test that doesn't work.
Thanks so much, Chris. Rebecca, so I've heard you talk about disagreeing with the test and also noting the stress that it can cause for students that are taking it. So do you fall more into the Chris and Billy camp of scrapping it entirely, or are you more of the, keep the test, but bring in other factors approach?
I want to eliminate the test and take a more holistic approach as well. I want to see students submit essays, teacher recommendations, do interviews with the specialized schools, look at their grades, look at their performance in much more of a total way, because the one test metric, it does stress students out. Think about all of us taking the SATs. Now we're making younger children do this just to get into high schools. And also long term, it shouldn't just be a few coveted high schools that we're forcing students to compete to get into. We need to increase funding for the Department of Education so we can open up more specialized high schools, which will also eliminate travel time to schools, which impacts children, impacts working families to get their children to those schools as well if they escort them. So it's a much more holistic approach where also long-term we're building out the number of specialized schools we have as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Rebecca. And finally, Tricia, so you also have been supported by Kids PAC, who's supporting Billy as well. And you said with them that you'd advocate for eliminating the test. So what's your approach? So it's no test, and then what other factors?
Actually reforming the test. So I believe that the test as is should be eliminated. I think that we can come up with a better portfolio of metrics. I'm not opposed to a test. I think that it probably should be a part of it, but I also think similarly to some of the other candidates, that it should be included with attendance, with teacher recommendations, with other metrics of success. So I think that we can come up with a more holistic approach to looking at these schools. I agree we should be building more specialized high schools. And I agree that really we're doing a disservice right now with the one test that we have in place.
Okay, so you would advocate for the creation of a new test that is not the SHSAT, but you're okay with a test itself existing?
As long as it's part of a larger portfolio, absolutely.
Okay, great. Let's move now to the gifted and talented programs. Let's just, we only have a few more minutes, so let's just do quickly, you support G&T, and how would you make them more diverse? And let's start with Rebecca on this one.
I want to take the gifted and talented curriculum and fold it into every classroom. I think it harms students that not every child is given the opportunity to learn these different things and have a different kind of learning style, so to speak. I think about gifted and talented in my elementary school, which granted was out on Long Island, so not a New York City public school, but still thinking about the really cool stuff the gifted and talented kids got to do and got to learn and got to experience that so many others didn't. And long term, I want to see those factors folded into our curriculum so every student gets access to them, so every student can learn in a different kind of way. I think the way it's done right now, it's similar to the specialized high school test. It disenfranchises a lot of New Yorkers from accessing these great programs.
All right, thanks, Rebecca. Now on to Kim. And Kim, you've got a furry friend in the background. Can we get a name as well?
That is Franklin Roosevelt behind me.
Hi, Franklin Roosevelt. Yeah, but on the D&T program.
Yeah, so I actually really do agree with Rebecca. I also, as a kid, was in a gifted and talented program, or we just called it gifted in my elementary school. But it was great to have that opportunity. It was one class that we went to a one day a week, but it was a great opportunity. I would like to see the G&T program folded into the curriculum for all schools. I think having separate schools for gifted and talented only serves to perpetuate the segregation we see in schools. At the same time, I know that there are parents who worry that their kids get bored in school. I've heard that from several parents. And so we want to make sure that we're educating kids, but that we're also keeping them interested, that we instill in them a love of learning. And I think that we do that by challenging them. Yep, absolutely. So I do support it, but it needs to be an opportunity that is given to all students.
Thanks. Billy, can you get this one in under 30 seconds?
I can try. So real quick, gifted and talented history. 2007, there was a more holistic measure. 31% of the students admitted to gifted and talented programs were Black. They changed it to the single test. 2008, it was 13% were Black. So we already see that racial discrepancy. I would start gifted and talented at a later age. I would go back to the more holistic measures, and I would start pushing for actually 2 teachers in every elementary school classroom so that we're achieving greatness everywhere in the system. And real briefly on SHSAT, let's go to the 7th grade math and ELA tests. I think that with a more holistic other measures is how you reform the process.
All right, 34 seconds, you're close. Chris, you're up. Do you think you can beat that?
I agree with Rebecca. I was homeschooled as a kid until I got to college. Given my childhood ADHD symptoms that subsided as I got older, I would not have placed into a gifted and talented program, and I would have missed out on educational opportunities that I needed and that I could access, but at a different rate and in a slightly different way. So I agree. We need to fold it in. Every child matters.
Thank you, Chris. Only 19 seconds. We got Julie now.
Well, I'm proud in this race to have the endorsement of the Teachers Union and CSA representing our school principals and administrators. And, you know, in speaking to them and speaking to parents, it is very, very clear we need to keep our G&T programs, but the way to diversify them is to expand them and offer them in every single school. We have to do that because we have accelerated learners in every single community, and it's unfair if we're not offering that opportunity to all. So really the way to address that is to make sure that we're expanding G&T, but I do not in any way believe we should eradicate them. I want to expand them.
Thank you, Julie. Tricia?
Yeah, so I answer this as a parent with a child who's on the cusp of this actually mattering to us, but I think that we should expand G&T. I think that it's crazy that we have 16,000 seats for 1.3 million students, but I also think that in terms of diversifying our G&T program, which I absolutely think we do, you actually have to diversify access. Children are gifted in different ways. We know that testing them at 4 years old may not show their gifted skills or may not show the academic setting that they need to have to succeed. So I think that we diversify access points, we diversify how they come into G&T, and we absolutely expand throughout the city.
Thank you, Tricia. And finally, Marco.
Thank you. We need to expand this program for all of the school systems. So we need to reduce the size of the schools. And therefore, what I'm proposing is to build more schools, more classes, so they can have an opportunity that the children, very small classes, and more opportunity to succeed in life. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. All right, we've got like one extra minute here. If there's not anything other than a yes or no, you guys have really been too rowdy for me. It's come up in the mayor debate twice now. It obviously is a state issue. The charter school cap, we have a couple mayoral candidates who would want to lift it. The rest do not. Yes or no, do you support lifting the charter school cap? And really, other than yes or no, I won't be too happy. Just go down the line. Trisha.
No.
Marco.
No.
Julie.
No.
Kim.
No.
Rebecca.
No.
Chris.
No.
Billy.
No.
All right, unanimous group there. I'll let the poll get queued up now as we get ready. Valerie is going to take over the next topic.
Okay, we're going to talk about small business. I'm going to start off by saying, I guess, that I'm the co-chair of the Small Business Committee of the Community Board 8, along with Alita Camp. And so we have been, during COVID, watching our small businesses with great interest and trying to support them through COVID. I'm really happy to say that on April 20th, an article appeared in the Wall Street Journal, talked about a great mystery that before the pandemic, a 27-block stretch of 2nd Avenue on Manhattan's Upper East Side was outperforming most city shopping strips with a relatively low storefront vacancy rate of 8.6%. And what happened during COVID on 2nd Avenue, the vacancy rate actually dropped to 6.4%. So that is an unbelievable statistic, and very happy about that for our community. And in fact, I think today in the patch, it was reported that there are actually 7 new restaurants on the Upper East Side that are opening up. So it's great to see that there are a lot of mom and pop businesses that survived the pandemic and that are taking the plunge to invest in the city, and even more particularly in our community. So I'll hope that everybody takes note of that and supports our local businesses. And I want to thank Barry Schneider from the East 60s Neighborhood Association for pointing that article out to us a couple of days ago. I want to start with Trisha and ask her, particularly in terms of your small business plan. You've called for the passage of the Small Business Job Survival Act. So can you talk a little bit about that in the, Billy, Cameron, what are we doing? 2 minutes, 1 minute? I just want to give everybody fair.
It depends if you're going to ask follow-ups or not, but try and keep the round to 15 minutes, 12 minutes.
Okay. All right. So take a minute and a half.
Great. So we all have seen the statistics. We've seen that even if on the Upper East Side, our vacancy rate has dropped, which is amazing. We know that that's not necessarily the case for the rest of the city. We know that we will lose at least a third of all of our small businesses in our city, if not more, by the end of this. We know that even as we start to feel a little bit more normal and people are starting to go out again, that our small businesses are still very much suffering. It's going to take a lot. And I frankly don't think that even just the passage of the Small Business Job Survival Act will save our small businesses. I think that it's going to be a long road ahead. And frankly, we need somebody who's going to be deeply committed to making sure that they survive. So much of our small businesses, I will just also say, it's not just about a brick and mortar tenant. It's small businesses add a richness, a character to our neighborhoods. They provide a level of safety and security on our streets. They really are, I have a very near and dear place to me for our small businesses. They are our neighbors. They are what makes our community, and we need to do everything we can to help them. A big chunk of that, I think a step in the right direction is passing the Small Business Job Survival Act, which would give our small businesses more negotiating power in renegotiating their leases at a lower level. I think that that's the least that we can start to do in this case. I also think that that we need to take additional steps. I'm very proud to have the support and endorsement of our former president of the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce, Nancy Plager, very proud Upper East Sider, because of my plan to add additional support, to provide additional supports for our small businesses, including a legacy small business plan that would help freeze rent for our truly unique small businesses. And we have a number of them on the Upper East Side that we just can't afford to lose. I think that we need to look creatively at how we use our streets. I think we need to look at direct funding and a direct support for these small businesses to help get them on their feet.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to move to Billy. Part of your support of the small businesses and helping them to stay where they are and grow is your advocacy for the vacancy tax. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you might get that implemented?
Yes, so it's not news to us. There are a lot of vacancies in our neighborhood, and many of them predated COVID. In fact, before COVID, we had the zip code 10021 with the second most retail vacancies in all of New York City. So what would a vacancy tax do? It can take many forms, but essentially it would say that for landlords who have pushed out a business by virtue of raising the rent, and where the storefront is vacant for I say 6 months, but it could be as few as 3 months, but the storefront's been vacant, we're going to tax you for keeping that storefront vacant. What would this do? It would give more leverage to the store owner to negotiate a renewal with the landlord. It would also, to the extent we get tax revenue, help cover some of the negative externalities that show up when the storefront is vacant. The storefront doesn't get shoveled, dirt piles up, it's not well lit, there's not, as Jane Jacobs would say, eyes on the street. This likely has to be done through Albany. There is an argument for how the city could do it, but what I would do is use my bully pulpit as a council member to push Albany to pass this. But it's not a solution by itself. It has to be coupled with other proposals. I support a storefront bill of rights that gives a tenant a right to renewal within 120 days of the lease expiring. I support reforming or reducing the commercial rent tax, which hits businesses south of 96th Street. I'm proud in this race to be endorsed by small business owners like Michael Lumenglass of Michael's Floral Design, because they've seen my concrete specific small business plans and they know that I'm general counsel in my family small business right now. I've seen what it's like to have to navigate federal, state, and local regulations, and I'm prepared to fight and be an advocate for our small businesses in the city council.
Right on time, Billy. Okay, I want to move to Rebecca and just talk a little bit about, your I think philosophy in terms of small business is about economic equality and an overall plan. And I think you talked a lot about commercial rent control. So maybe tell us a little bit about your position on that.
Absolutely. So small businesses are the lifeblood of our community. When I think about my favorite places to go, it's never a CVS. It's always Delizia Pizza at my corner. It's Nick's, the restaurant up at 94th Street. It's Lisa's on 2nd, where I was there earlier today buying thank you cards. Those are the businesses that we need to be supporting. And to me, by enacting commercial rent control, we can put a cap on the exorbitant rents that so many businesses face, where right now during COVID, we see people struggling to stay open. Foot traffic isn't the same in and out of businesses. People are not purchasing as much because of the economic impacts they're feeling, and giving some regularity in the rents that small business owners know they would be paying, knowing the increases they would be facing as well, giving them more power in those conversations can give them not just peace of mind, but help them plan long-term for their business. Outside of that, we also need to pass the Small Business Job Survival Act. Small businesses are a major employer here in the city of New York. Think about the restaurant industry alone and all of the New Yorkers that they support through the jobs that they offer to people. I also want to be sure that we're doing things like putting direct money in the hands of small business owners that have been able to keep their heads above water during COVID, but so many operate on that line where if they don't have the same good week, they maybe can't pay their staff, bring in product, pay their rent at the end of the month. So offering direct money that doesn't need to be repaid from the city to small businesses so they can keep the lights on, they can stay open while the city begins to reopen and while we get back to a sense of a new normal coming out of COVID.
Thanks very much. Kim, I want to move to you. You started a small local Yorkville. I'm going to get the name wrong, so you can start off with that and tell us a little bit about your experience and what you're looking forward to in terms of helping small businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called Yorkville by Local. We actually, started that in 2019 in response to what we were seeing, which were empty storefronts in the neighborhood. We did a forum on it the year before, and we realized there really wasn't any kind of a local resource for people who were interested in helping our local mom and pops. And so we started this group promoting our local small businesses. We hosted a small business walking tour before COVID hit, obviously, to try to promote those businesses. We know that they were already hurting before the pandemic. And we know that since the pandemic, something like 40% of the small businesses that were in business prior to the pandemic are no longer here. So obviously we need to do something about that. I think first and foremost, we need to get direct relief to those businesses. A lot of the small business owners were shut out of the PPP loan program because they didn't have the resources to navigate the process. And unfortunately, the city didn't do nearly enough to help them do that. I think that we need liaisons within the small business services to help those small business owners navigate that process and get the funding that they need. I'd like to see the city use federal money to provide grants to those businesses to help them rehire workers, to help them get through now that we are finally starting to reopen. I'd like to see more interagency coordination to help streamline the process and make it much less bureaucratic for our small businesses. And finally, most importantly, or one of the most important things we can do is crack down on predatory tech giants. You know, we see companies like DoorDash, like Seamless, that are really taking advantage of these small businesses. The city council was able to pass a temporary cap on fees. I'd like to see that cap permanent. And I would like to see us have far more regulation of these apps that are not only exploiting small businesses, but exploiting many delivery workers. So I think there's a lot that we can do at the city level to help those small businesses promote our mom and pops and help them to keep going because they are the lifeblood of our neighborhoods.
Thanks very much. Julie, I'm going to move to you. I know that as Billy is involved in a small business now, you had your own small business. So tell us how that experience will help you deal with small business issues that come up. If you
Yes. Well, thank you, Valerie. So I used to own a small business. I used to own Vine Restaurant. It was a restaurant and catering business. I had close to 100 employees. It was located in Lower Manhattan before 9/11. My business was completely devastated on 9/11. And in the weeks following 9/11, I started a not-for-profit organization focused on rebuilding downtown with a focus on small businesses. We helped over 600 small businesses at the time get back on their feet. Also, as a former commissioner of consumer affairs, I lowered fines by 1/3 on small businesses because these fines were crushing small businesses. So I have a wealth of experience to bring to the table. I do have a point of disagreement that was raised before on the Small Jobs Business Survival Bill. Two issues with that. If you read the text of the bill, it actually also protects large tenants like JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs and locks them into a 10-year lease renewal. I don't think that's the kind of bill that we need. I think we actually need far more targeted relief that really zeroes in on small businesses so we can help them. I also believe the city should be doing zero interest loans using community development financial institutions. As a DCA commissioner, I worked with groups like Neighborhood Trust. They're terrific. We need to make sure they're doing that work. At the state level, we should do what we did after 9/11, which is look at a sales tax holiday. It really helps small businesses. At the federal level, we need to connect these small businesses with PPP money. The city Small Business Services organization is really not doing very much of that. I'm helping small businesses every day be connected to PPP loans. So we really need to be doing so much more. And then lastly, I would just say we need to be using NYC and Company. I sat on their executive board. They're the city's marketing and tourism arm. They need to be doing a far better job, really doing robust advertising for our struggling small businesses.
Thanks a lot, Julie. And Chris, I'm going to move to you. I actually liked your webpage where you talked about, instead of talking about issues, using the term values. And when you were talking about small business, you were talking about values. So why don't you talk about the interconnectivity, or you don't have to, but the interconnectivity between employees. I saw you shaking your head a lot when Kim was talking about going after Seamless and Grubhub. So maybe that is the good place to jump off. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for that. And I love that you just referenced Kim, because I was going to open by complimenting her on Yorkville by Local, because it's so easy to talk about policies, but she saw a problem and she just got out there and did something. And that means a lot. And You're right. I do like to use the term values as opposed to specifically policies because it's a good reminder that what we're talking about are human beings. And I'd like to respond to what Julie just said as well. I agree with Julie about the issue in the Small Business Job Survival Act. I actually used to work in the New York State Senate. I was an aide to numerous senators in the Democratic caucus. I believe that we can address that problem in the final bill text before we get to passage because I don't think that bill has yet passed all of its committees yet. But in addition to that, yes, we have to help our small businesses through not just our local and state funds, but we need to be working with Congresswoman Maloney as well at the federal level to make sure that we're implementing the American Rescue Plan in a positive way and getting that direct relief to small businesses because small businesses aren't just about the economy. It's also about workers. It's about the safety of our streets. Lively streets are safer streets. So we do need to ensure that we keep in mind that what we're talking about are human jobs and human lives and ensure that our relief efforts are matching the scale of the issue. Also, I'm going to plug a part of Billy's platform that I don't think he actually mentioned there, which was specifically about legacy small businesses and ensuring that they're not shut down. So I think that's a great plan. And I think he got cut off before he could say it. So I'll say it for him.
My name was invoked. Do I get to respond?
Yeah, sure.
I'm just kidding. But I will say, it's something Trisha's also talked about as well. I think it's really important, and I won't abuse the privilege, so I'll stop.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And so I think Marco is our last person on this issue. I just want to say, I know that when open restaurants began, Marco went and visited almost every single restaurant on the Upper East Side so that he could help them implement it as best they could without violating any laws and make sure that businesses on the Upper East Side survived. And Marco, I didn't want to let it pass that you should get some recognition for that because that was truly a yeoman's effort on behalf of the community. So I wanted to congratulate you on that and give you an opportunity to talk about, that experience and how that would serve you in advocating for the interests of small business in this district and around the city.
Thank you for that acknowledgement. The first thing I had to say is the restaurant business, they create $1 trillion in the national economy. So it's extremely important to bring back those businesses. So in that direction, I have clients. Most of my clients are the restaurant owners because I do the design. And one of the issues that usually I face is the leases. The leases are too long and they are unable to cover the expenses. Those expenses usually are extremely high at the beginning. I myself, I'm part of the expenses. They need to put plumbing, they need to decorate the places, they need to pay fees. So those business, if they don't make it in the short period of time, they go in bank. It will break completely the business. So that was my conversation with them. And exactly when I was talking to them, they said, our biggest problem is the leases. And the leases, the only thing that we can resolve is to establish 3 types of leases. One, a short period of time, maybe 5 years, that the business owner recuperate that money. And then after that, they have an opportunity probably to double the time. So the business owner can make some profits in that period of time. And after that, it will come probably a consideration of increase of the lease. So in this element, basically was my conversation with all the restaurant owners, and in this conversation, only one was removed the liquor license. All of them apparently they listened what I was advising to do. And not only that, I did also posting all the corners of the streets. So I'm fully aware of this situation because they represent extremely important business for our economy. And to do that,
thank you, Marco. We have to wrap up. Sorry. I think we're at the end of the small business portion. I just want to thank everyone for their thoughtful ideas for the small businesses on behalf of the small businesses of the Upper East Side, and appreciate all the work that you've put in on this topic. We're doing our poll now. I think everyone see it? I think it's happening. So, all right, I'm going to throw it back to Cameron, and I think we're almost at the end of time. So are we going to allow the questioning?
Oh, we're definitely going to allow the questioning.
Okay.
I have a feeling that that's what people have stayed on for. We, by the way, have almost 200 people on still, despite being about 85 minutes into this. Yeah, clap it up for the engaged voters here of Council District 5 on the east side of Manhattan. You know, we really appreciate it, and we're glad that everybody understands just how important this election is for the future of our city. So as I promised, we are going to have a round where everybody can ask another candidate a question. The only rule that I will say is it has to be a question. Please do not rant, you know, go off on a diatribe, but don't formulate it as a question. It's got to be a question. You know, it can be friendly, it can be a gotcha question. Doesn't matter. It just got to be a question.
It's just like you're on Jeopardy. It's got to be in the form of a question.
Exactly. So we have first up Billy.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask a question of Julie. It is not going to be on the topic everyone's expecting. Julie, you've mentioned throughout the campaign that you've actually said in mailers that you're the only candidate with the experience we need right now. A lot of us have deep experience in this community, community board members, people with record in government. When Ben Kalos ran in 2013, he was a community board member, as many of us are. He was a lawyer, as I am. Are you saying Ben Kalos was too inexperienced back then to meet the challenges we face today?
Well, thank you for the question, Billy. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm simply focused on my record, and I think voters should judge each of us on our record. I'm really proud of the fact that I was a 7-year community board chair. I really believe in community boards. I wouldn't have wanted to chair the board for as long as I did. I was one of the longest serving Manhattan community board chairs, but I'm also very proud of my city service. I have been a commissioner starting in the Bloomberg administration. I have run 3 city agencies, serving as commissioner of the Department of Consumer Affairs, implementing the paid sick leave law, the living wage law, as Commissioner of Media and Entertainment, addressing gender equity and launching a dozen programs to help women in the creative sectors, negotiating the deal to bring the Grammy Awards back, running the census, working in the city law department in one of their top jobs where we went down to the Supreme Court and beat the Trump administration on the citizenship question. I teach on city government. I am merely making sure that voters know my deep level experience. We're in a crisis. And I believe experience matters in a crisis. There are going to be 35 out of 51 open seats on the council next year. I think we need to elect people who have deep, deep level city experience. So I'm in no way talking about anyone else's experience. I'm simply only talking about mine. Thank you.
Cameron, I may jump in.
Yeah, you can say something quickly, very quickly.
Yeah, and I'll be very brief. The problem with Julie's answer is that she's explicitly said she's the only one. She's implicitly talking about the rest of us. And I must say, I'm so honored to be on the stage with people who have spent hundreds of hours, if not thousands, in our community board meetings. Rebecca, Trisha, Marco. I've seen Kim and Chris out in the neighborhood doing the hard work. And I think what we need in a city council member is someone who knows this community best, who's done that hard work. Yes, you are a former community board chair, right, but you did it downtown. And I think we should focus on what we really need as a community.
All right, Billy. Let's move to Chris now.
My question is for Rebecca. You've made disability a centerpiece of your candidacy and the rights that people have to accessibility. How do you believe that we've done as a field at following that lead and implementing strong disability justice policy?
I think we've set a great example for other council candidates, other campaigns out there. There's still a lot that we need to be doing. You know, for example, I believe I'm the only candidate that puts alt text and image descriptions on our social media. That's something that's really important for blind New Yorkers. Captioning on videos. I know some candidates here have put out videos without captioning. That's really important for disabled New Yorkers as well. Some of the forums we've participated in haven't been accessible. No ASL, no captions. Even the in-person debate that we did just last week with Carnegie Hill, it was in an inaccessible building. So for me to go up those steps, it was painful. Even though it was just a few steps, it impacted me. And it impacted the pain I felt during my performance in that debate and my wellness for the rest of the evening. So we've set a really great example, but we have a lot more work to do. I'm really hopeful that everyone takes disability justice very seriously, sees it as the human rights issue that it is, because that's truly the reckoning we need to have as a city and as a country. You know, accessibility isn't gaining access simply to a physical space. Accessibility is everything all around us. It's our housing, it's our education. It's not enough to say, I have a family member that's disabled. People live with disabilities like myself every day, and I'm very blessed to have a lot of mobility, but still, I operate in our community with a different kind of perspective. I operate in our city with a different perspective. And I think about and sometimes get emotional thinking back to a story where I was down at City Hall representing union workers there for a committee hearing. We were working on a bill, on a legislative item, and City Hall security told me if I couldn't physically walk up the large flight of stairs into City Hall, maybe I shouldn't be there. They didn't direct me to the ADA entrance that's around the side of City Hall because they looked at me and they judged me and they discriminated against me. And I'm running for city council right now. So no New Yorker ever feels the way I did that day. No New Yorker ever has to ask for access, ask for existence, because it's there for all of us one day.
Thank you, Rebecca. Julie, your turn.
Great. I've got a question for Marco. Marco, I think one of the challenges we have with the FDR Drive is that it's severing the community from one of its greatest assets, which is our waterfront. I know you had a plan to transform the FDR Drive. Can you elaborate on that?
Thank you, Julie. According with the FEMA maps, which I'm an expert in that, the flooding area in that section will be 11 feet. And so what I'm proposing is to raise the sea level 11 feet. So at that level, it will cover the existing esplanade or pathway. Then I have an opportunity to put a bike lane in that section. And with that decision also, I cover or I protect the FDR Drive and some buildings to be flooded. And then the top of that, separated from the pedestrian deck, we have a pedestrian platform, continue the existing platform that ends at 81st Street. And in addition to that, I present a cantilever seating, scenic view toward the river that they can have a beautiful view. And that's basically what it is.
Perfect. Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.
Kim, your turn to ask a question.
Sure thing. So my question is for Julie. Julie, I know you've worked alongside Bill de Blasio for years as his go-to czar. Today, in many of these forums, you've criticized the administration in a way that many of us have been doing over the years. And I'm curious, what has changed since you left the administration in November of last year that makes you change the way that you talk about the mayor after being in his inner circle for over 6 years?
Well, thank you for that question, Kim. Just to be clear, I started as a commissioner in the Bloomberg administration. I'm the only one who has worked as a commissioner for both Mayor Bloomberg and Mayor de Blasio because I love city service. I love serving the public, and I've been honored to serve in city service. To make a comment that I'm in the inner circle of Bill de Blasio, I was never in the inner circle of Bill de Blasio. I'm proud of the fact that I got to lead 3 city agencies. It was an honor, but I was a very independent commissioner, and that is widely known. When I led the Consumer Affairs Department, I did not allow any interference from City Hall, and I made that clear on day one. The same can be said of the other agencies I led. So I was a very independent commissioner, and I'm proud of the fact that I started as a commissioner under Mayor Bloomberg. Thanks for the question.
Kim, you have like 10 seconds if you want. Or... All right.
No, I'm fine.
Great. All right, Marco.
Thank you. A couple months ago, all the news talked about was that New York failed to count 89 people in the last city census. Therefore, our city lost 1 political seat in the Congress and millions of dollars for public school, affordable housing, senior programs, etc., from the federal government for the next 10 years. Julie, how do you account for your lack of commitment to this job? Thank you.
Marco, thank you for the question. That is completely untrue. First of all, I am so proud of the fact that New York actually had the best result on the census since World War II. Every single decade, New York State has lost 2 congressional seats. This time we lost 1 congressional seat and we came tantalizingly close to losing 0. How did we do it? We won our case at the Supreme Court against the Trump administration. We organized New York City's self-response rate, as the Daily News did an editorial saying we were #1. We beat almost every other city all across the country. And that is something to be incredibly proud of. We absolutely did not lose money on the census. So I'm sorry, it's showing a fundamental misunderstanding of how the census worked. On the contrary, we actually beat LA, Chicago, Miami, Atlanta, Boston, Philadelphia, Dallas, Houston, just to name a few.
I think I have to answer that part. I think you are saying that all the news, they are lying.
I'm so sorry, could you repeat that? I did not hear that.
The question, I'm saying that all the news that was all over the channels, they are lying.
No one is lying, Marco. To be clear, we were expected by every single pundit to lose 2 congressional seats. We've lost 2 congressional seats every single decade since World War II. We've always lost 2 congressional seats. We used to have 45 members of Congress in the 1950s, and we've gone all the way down to 27. Now we've gone to 26. It's never good to lose a congressional seat, let's be clear, but we were supposed to lose 2. We prevented that, and we did that in the middle of COVID when New York City was the epicenter of COVID. So if you speak to anyone involved with the census, they will clearly say the city did a phenomenal job on the census. Unfortunately, Governor Cuomo opted not to allocate money, and the numbers upstate were not good. But to be clear, the city far surpassed any expectation.
I don't think so, but okay, thank you. That's what you're still saying.
You asked the question, she answered
Thank you.
it. Let's move on.
Thank you for
So we have Trisha now.
Yeah, my question is for Chris. Chris, June is Pride Month, and as a candidate who identifies as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, I'm wondering if you could talk about what the city can do to advance the civil rights of other LGBTQ plus New Yorkers.
Thank you so much for that question. You're a wonderful person, and I appreciate you. I think that we have made a mistake in linking LGBTQ plus with primarily white gay men, people who look like me. And we know that what we're seeing is an uptick in violence against queer people of color, against specifically Black trans women. And we need to ensure that we're addressing these systemic problems. And one of the biggest systemic problems outside of hate crimes is actually healthcare access. We have essentially a healthcare guarantee in New York City. It's not entirely properly implemented, but in theory, New Yorkers who live in New York City can access healthcare. But for various common services for trans New Yorkers, they're extremely difficult to access, and that has major implications. Another issue is addiction services. The LGBTQ plus community overall has higher rates of smoking, of alcohol abuse, and of drug misuse. And a lot of that comes from, again, that lack of healthcare that starts at a really early age, in addition to rejection from a lot of the spaces that prevent some of these negative habits from forming. So we're among major cities, we're actually better than most, but we still have a really long way to go. And thank you so much for asking that question. It means a lot.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Trisha. And finally for this, we have Rebecca.
I'm going to ask a really quick one to all the candidates. Very quick, I promise, Cameron.
Well, this is that, Rebecca, I hate that it's not the format. You got to ask one candidate a question.
Well, I don't have anyone to choose. I will simply say that I hope we're all engaging in good self-care. My question is going to be what my fellow candidate colleagues are doing for self-care. It's been a long road. We've been running for a number of years, some of us. It's very stressful, obviously. So I just wanted to hear from everyone what we're doing for self-care. I will share mine. I have a glass of Pinot Grigio and I do a face mask at least once a week, and it's my personal time. So I hope everyone is also doing the same.
Well, thank you for that, Rebecca. And by the way, as a former candidate myself, I do appreciate Rebecca bringing that up. It is an important thing to note. But for the sake of the format, Rebecca, choose one of your fellow competitors to answer that question.
I'll kick it to Chris.
Okay, Chris.
Thank you. Stretching. It is so important to stretch. We are on our feet so much. So making sure that you're doing good calf stretches, especially, you sleep better when you get good stretches in. So put on an audiobook or your favorite music and make sure you're stretching every single night. It helps reduce pain. Super important. The other thing is I have a new rescue kitten. I just snuggle that thing for like a solid 30 minutes to an hour every day while I'm doing other stuff. Calms me down.
Okay, the second best cat possibly amongst the field of candidates. I think FDR might take the cake. All right, with that, that is the end of our question asking section. I'm going to turn it back over to Valerie now to moderate closing statements. I think we'll try and keep them to 45 seconds or so.
45 seconds. Well, maybe they can just answer the question that Rebecca asked. No. Okay, I just call out people's names. 45 seconds. Say whatever you want. Julie.
Well, thank you so much, Valerie. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you to the 72nd Street Association. Thank you to my colleagues here. This has been a wonderful format, and I hope most importantly for the voters that they get to hear where we stand, our level of experience and differences between the candidates, because there are differences. So it really gives voters a choice. I'm running on my record, my 2-decade track record in city government as someone who's deeply passionate about public service. I also think that's why I have such a broad and diverse coalition of support. I'm not going to announce all my endorsers, but I will say I'm tremendously honored to have the endorsement of the Central Labor Council representing over 300 unions, the Teachers Union, 32BJ, DC 37, the Nurses Union, the Sanitation Union, the Hotel Trades, 3 members of Congress, Jerry Nadler, Nydia Velasquez, Adriana Espaillat, our Assembly member from East Harlem, Robert Rodriguez, and so many others, and so many community leaders, because of the fact that people want someone who is going to hit the ground running on day one. I'd be honored to be your city councilwoman, and thank you so much for listening tonight.
Okay, appreciate that. Kim, how about you? 45 seconds, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, thank you, of course, to Valerie and for Cameron and for the 72nd Street Association for hosting this event tonight. It's been really wonderful. Look, my name is Kim Mascaratolo. I am a journalist, an activist, and an advocate, and I'm running because fundamentally I believe that we need to bring some real transparency, accountability, and independent leadership to City Hall. I am extremely proud of so much of the local support that I have received, endorsements from people like Senator Liz Kruger, Senator Jose Serrano, Assemblymember Seawright. I am incredibly proud to have received the first ranked endorsement from former council member Jessica Lappin, as well as groups like Indivisible Upper East Side, the For Freedoms Democratic Club, Citizen Action, and so many others. And I believe I have their support because they know that I will put this community first and that I will fight to make sure that our neighborhood and our city continues to thrive as we recover from this pandemic. And they know that I'll fight for the bright future that we all know is possible for our city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Billy, how about you?
Well, thank you again, Valerie and Cameron, for this forum. I would be honored to be your next city council member. And I think from talking to folks on the phone, in the street, what people want right now is someone with fresh ideas that does turn the page from the politics of the past, but more importantly, people who know our communities, every nook and cranny of our district. It's been my honor to be serving on our community board 3 years in a row, elected as secretary by my colleagues. I'm honored to have the support of neighborhood groups like Upper East Side Progressives, Indivisible Upper East Side, and groups like Stonewall Democrats and the Black Lives Caucus, Streets PAC, and many more. At the end of the day, I think folks are looking for someone they can trust, someone that they know is going to answer the call, someone who they know is going to respond to their email, someone who they know is going to fight day in and day out for our neighborhood. And those of you who have gotten to know me know I'm a fighter. I love this neighborhood. I'm excited for the opportunity to fight for you. And if you want to learn more about me, please go to my website, billyfreeland.com. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, Chris, let's go to you.
First, I want to say thank you to you, Valerie and Cameron and the association, because we've reached the end of this road and you all have had the single most successful forum/debate events of anyone. So please, giant round of applause, everybody.
Thank you.
I just want to thank my opponents. I want to thank the voters of the district for making this race such a robust debate. I have a lot of friends running across the city, and they frequently will text me and say, I wish I was running where you're running, because the quality of the conversation is just so high. In addition to that, I'm going to use my final seconds for a bit of a PSA. Please, everyone remember, this is a ranked choice voting election. Ensure that you're using all 5 slots. Don't let your ballot be exhausted. You have a say in who the next member is. You can rank 5 of us. Make sure you're actually using it. I know I will be ranking 4 of my opponents here tonight. So thank you all so much, and I would be incredibly honored to serve as your next council member.
Thank you so much, Chris. We appreciate it. Marco, you're next.
Thank you, Valerie, and thank you for listening to me tonight. I have a comprehensive understanding of our community needs, and with my 12 years experience listening to their problems in the community board, along with my 39 years of experiences as an architect and planner, I have the support of E79 Street Association. I am the only candidate ready from day one to work hard, make us the vibrant, safe neighborhood that we can be. To do that, I need your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see who Patricia, you're next.
Sure. So it's not lost on me that our last forum is in the neighborhood association that I'm a part of. I find it to be incredibly meaningful and special, frankly, because if you know me and you know you've heard our message throughout this campaign, you know that this has been one large love letter from me to our neighborhood. These blocks, this neighborhood, this district is my home. It's the only place that I want to raise my son. It's the only place that I want to be, that I want to afford to be. And I'm running because I want to make sure that our community is protected and preserved and enhanced for generations to come. That's it. And I'm asking you for your support. I'm asking you to rank me first, to join our other community leaders like Congresswoman Maloney, State Senator Kruger, Assemblywoman Seawright, so many other incredible groups and organizations like Tenants PAC, East River Dems, Sierra Club, and many more in ranking us first and really changing what an elected official looks like in our community. Now more than ever, we need a community voice. I'm asking you to put your community first. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think we'll end with Rebecca.
I want to start by thanking Valerie, Cameron, the Neighborhood Association for hosting 2 amazing forums. The election is just a few weeks away, and I'm here to humbly ask you to rank me 1. Rank me 1 because of my professional experience. For the last 10 years, I've represented unionized workers, passing laws down at City Hall, passing laws up in Albany, leading housing and land use campaigns. My personal experience as a disabled New Yorker. Disabled New Yorkers don't have a seat at the table, and vulnerable New Yorkers in other areas don't either. And I'm running to give them a seat, bring them into the rooms where decisions are made, represent disabled New Yorkers, represent seniors, tenants, workers in the halls of power, where too often we see the levers of power pulled to hurt instead of help communities like ours. I'm so proud of the progressive coalition that we've built around my campaign. I've been endorsed by over 20 organizations, individuals and unions, including former gubernatorial candidate Cynthia Nixon, Our Revolution, the New York Progressive Action Network, the New York City Building Trades, and over a dozen other labor unions, because they know I have the experience to hit the ground running for us on day one and represent our community to make it more affordable, accessible, and equitable. So please join me in this movement, vote for me on June 22nd, and rank me first on your ballot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to say, I'll end the evening here by saying we want to thank you all for coming back for the second round of this forum. This is the first time we've done it, and it's been a really great pleasure being a part of this. I want to thank Cameron for all the hard work he's put into this, and I want to thank all of you for coming to East 72nd Street's Cleanup Day. We hope that whether you're a candidate or not, or our council person, you'll be showing up to our events and continue to be part of the neighborhood. We really appreciate that. I want to thank all of this is unbelievable. There's still 182 people with us right now. So I want to thank, this is a fabulous community to be a part of. I think we're all saying that tonight, whether we're candidates or not. And we are really blessed to have such a caring group of citizens that live in this neighborhood who are fighting for it every day. And so I just want to thank you and wish you all good luck, however this turns out. And I also want to hold up my fast voting pass, because I want to recommend to everyone who's out there to bring this with you to the polls. And early voting starts on June 12th through June 20th. take advantage of it. Our existing electeds have worked hard to gain more early voting sites, so please take advantage of it and get out there. And let's show the world that New York is not a ghost town and that we're all here and we're fighting for our future together. Thank you so much and have a great evening. See you soon.
Thank you all. Good night.
Everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Have a great night, everyone. Be safe.
Thank
Now you can
you.
do the stretch.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.
I'm stretching to grab a gin and tonic. That's my stretch.
Thanks, Valerie, for everything. This is great.
Thank you.
Yep. Great job, Valerie. Great job. Great job, Cameron.